This is going to be a little bit of a different video, but I mostly just wanted to have, I guess, a fireside chat with you. This isn't, there's no fire here, except for the one in my heart. But what I wanted to talk about was this idea that context is like imperative to making, like, to feeling things. And in video games especially, I think we run into this like predicament, right? Because video game music aids us in telling a story. And it's programmatic music. Programmatic music being music that is written to aid in the telling of a story. And if we think about the classical time period in classical music, for instance, in the umbrella term classical music, there are things like that music was written, and it's called simple music. And simple music's intention was music that was simply written to be written. So, like, just to clarify on this definition, this is actually taken from HelloMusicTheory.com. Dan Ferrant wrote this. In Western classical music, program music refers to a piece, usually instrumental rather than vocal, that is about something or which has some kind of extra musical meaning. This is in contrast to absolute music or abstract music, which is simply music that is written for its own sake. So simple, absolute, I kind of got those terms mixed up, but the point is the same. And so what's really interesting here, program music might attempt to mirror an existing story from a book or play through sound, or it might evoke a more general scene from nature. What I find really interesting about this idea is that, like, when we listen to video game music, in general, like, pieces need to aid in telling the story, right? There are certain pieces of music that stand alone and don't require context. Like, for instance, as an example, this is such a random thing I'm doing, but, like, let's listen to this really quick, okay? So it's interesting to me, Ludwig the Holy Blade. Like, we listen to this and we automatically, like, that's uncomfy. And for a modern audience that is used to sort of crunching dissonance and uncomfortable feelings, it's actually, like, not that weird to listen to this. However, what's fascinating is that in context, I think the battle sequence music adds a lot, but honestly, we don't really need it in order to, like, evoke a sensation. So what I mean by that is that, like, this music can actually stand alone on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need context, but truly, like, the context is interesting because, you know, Ludwig obviously looks like this. So, like, seeing Ludwig here, that obviously, when we then now circle back to the music and we hear this, you're like, holy shit, this is disgusting, right? Like, that looks terrible. And you hear the, like, messed upness in the music, which enhances the experience. And then, of course, you get into the actual fight scene, and the music really helps that feeling. However, what I want to point out is that, like, I've been sharing this now with many non-gamers, and pretty much everybody I've shared this with has had the same reaction to this section. Right, so, like, video games live in this weird spectrum where, like, I personally believe that you can listen to this music out of context and it will still matter, and it will still be informative, and it will still be incredible. And there are certain pieces in the musical canon of video games that actually make sense to listen to outside of the game. Like, I think about something I just listened to, Omori Final Duet, right? Like, this piece, it's funny because every time I play this in a stream or something, people will be like, oh my God, it's so sad, when you know the context, like, it's sad, right? But then if you listen to it, But like, that's a beautiful classical musical piece on its own. It doesn't require context. But it's this sort of interesting discussion that I think we've all been having in this video game music fan circle that's sprung up around Marco Meatball in this channel, in the idea that, you know, context is king and you need context in order to feel emotions. And most recently I posted a video about, you know, what makes, like, the Try Not to Cry challenge. And I listened to something like Flow from Final Fantasy XIV. And what's interesting to me, spoilers if you haven't seen it, so like an intro like that, to me, this song and its lyrics actually do more for me personally. They do much more for me out of context than they do in context. I cried a lot while playing Endwalker, but I think what I'm starting to realize is that my association with music may be very different than yours. So for instance, for me listening to music, it's not about like characters. I've gotten attached to plenty of characters in my time, and usually I don't finish single player games because I feel sad. Like Final Fantasy 16 is a prime example. I enjoyed Final Fantasy 16. I played it very quickly to avoid spoilers. I dove deep. I experienced what I wanted to experience, and I won't start a new game plus. Me personally, I don't like to replay because I already know what's going to happen, and that feeling of knowingness actually makes me kind of sad. But it's not like I listened to the music in Final Fantasy 16 and related that to the characters. And I don't know if that's because I've spent so much time in music school and in like a decade plus in opera, so I have adapted to the idea that music can move us, but maybe I'm still in the performer's brain where I'm not relating it to the characters, but I'm relating to what the music does. You know what I mean? So like when I listen to, I really wish I could play you examples because the copyright stuff is crazy with classical music, unfortunately, which is kind of, the artists need to be paid, but it's kind of a shame because I feel like there's so much that I want to share with you about opera and about classical music that I have to like find like loopholes into to share it. But you know, for me, I don't think I've ever cried about a character. Like there's stuff that happens at the end of Final Fantasy XIV that is sad, but more so because I connect it to my personal life. So like Undertale, a prime example. Undertale, the famous moment. If you haven't played it, you should. It's a good game. There's a moment where you look at the mirror and it says, after all this time, it's still you, or whatever the quote is. And in my gameplay of it, I wept. I got really choked up. And I didn't expect to be choked up from Undertale because I thought it was a kid's game, and I didn't really think it was that meaningful up until that moment when I experienced that. And it's not because of the journey that like that character went through. And maybe this is why Undertale is so popular. But it was about me. And the music of Undertale was playing under the... Did I just prove my point? Did I just prove your point that context matters? At the same time, the music of Undertale made me cry even listening to it before seeing that scene because it reminded me of my relationship with my father who's passed away, right? So then when I saw after all this time it's still you, I wasn't thinking about the character I was playing as. I was thinking about me, Marco, having gone through 2.5 years of all this pain and suffering with watching my dad and his illness and, you know, other things that happened in my personal life at the same time that were really, really stressful. Like that was the thing that when I saw that text, that's what hit me and made me feel emotional. It wasn't the game. It was the experience, like 14.3 billion years from Outer Wilds. So it's something within what Andrew Prallo does here that makes me emotional. It's not the context of the game. And maybe I need to do some like really some deeper understanding about how context and video game, because in my mind, I believe that you can separate these two things. I believe you can separate music from the game, and that the music is just as powerful, and in an ideal world should stand alone. And maybe it's because I grew up in classical music and this idea of, you know, complete work, abstract, absolute music that is intentionally written for no purpose, right? But then at the same time, that does take away from the medium of video games, because then it, like Viego's theme, Jhin's theme is a prime example. Like Jhin's theme to me, and all of the Riot League of Legends themes are a complement to the characters that they portray. They're written in a way that is reflective of the character. Same with Guilty Gear, same with Monster Hunter even, same with all this other stuff. But it's a really interesting thing because I believe that these pieces stand on their own. Saafi'Jiva's theme from Monster Hunter, even though you as a Monster Hunter player are going to feel this music and be thrust into that moment, or Fatalis when you hear Proof of a Hero pop in, like this to me, I think perfectly stands on its own. I don't need to have experienced fighting Saafi'Jiva in order to feel the intensity of that. And it's just a funny conversation about context, and if context truly does matter in this visual medium that is video games, which we've been talking about, is this idea of the Gesamtkunstwerk, which is this term coined by Wagner, and how it relates to video games being the complete art and art being the complete art. It was talking about opera specifically at that time, but things have evolved, and so it's just I wanted to make this really brief sort of chat about this. It's going on for about 15 minutes here, but this idea that I do think that we need to look at how video game music as an abstract can stand on its own, right? Like, how do we look at these pieces as individual pieces? And should we look at them as individual pieces? Because in my mind, I have a little bit of an interesting dialogue with folks that come on the channel and leave comments sometimes, because I personally don't think context matters. And I will stand by that. And I think that that's just because I have a decade of tuning into something. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we have to see things and in order to feel them and hear them, and video games being the perfect medium to do that. However, if we can not create fake scenarios of imagination in our heads when we listen to music, but if we can allow ourselves to clue into an experience in our personal lives, emotions that come up that we want to explore, and then we listen to a piece, I think that that's how we can connect to music without context. And it's a really interesting discussion. I don't really have a point in this video. I've never done something like this, but I figured, well, I might as well. I listened to a piece like Tenebroso Sangue from Ultra Kill. That in context, while you're walking around and you're, shooting things and in the pits of hell, like that is really going to give us a feeling of like excitement and galvanization. But I also think that when we listen to a slower, sad piece, maybe there's a way that we can connect to something that we feel sad about in our lives. And that's how we connect to a piece, rather than having to see something visually in order to do that. And maybe that's not feasible, and that's okay, right? Like, that's the beauty of video games, that the context exists. But yeah, I guess that's just a big rant about context, and if context matters, and should context matter, and do we even need context? And I guess what I'm always trying to do, at least on this channel, and what I like to do as my life's mission, is to remove the context from these pieces and place them in a symphony hall, not in a Pops concert, not in your near concert that I can't wait to go see, or in a Distant Worlds concert, but like in truly, like, in the moment, like, this belongs next to Beethoven 5. You take an intermission and then you come back and you're listening to, you know, the Eternal Wind from freaking Final Fantasy 3. Like, why can't we listen to that out of context? Like that song, or Battle on Big Bridge. Like, why do we need context to know? Yes, that's the fight between Gilgamesh, but like, you know, why do we need context for that? Like, listen, I mean, like. Anyway, I could listen to that. Or why do we need context for something like Rue's theme from Genshin Impact? You know, like, freak, like. Yeah, like, that's sad, right? And we can, if we allow ourselves to connect to life moments, something like this can really hit us hard. You know what I mean? Like, I think about something like Narwhal from Punishing Gray Raven. There's never a moment where this isn't gonna slap. And yes, in context, it was really cool to watch this battle between these two, you know, powerful beings. But I mean, if you just take it out of context. Like, that slaps. I don't need to know that there's a fight between two characters in that. Or I think about something I recently listened to, Scars of Time. Like, do you hear this, like, 90s goodness in that? And, like, if I allow myself, speaking to you, to connect to an emotion or a feeling that exists from an experience in my life, that can make me feel some sort of way. And then if we fast forward. Right, like, what a great tune. That said, your points about your points about context mattering are valid. And the reason why I would also bring that up is, like, not every piece is meant to stand on its own 2 feet. Like, I think about a track like Insurrection from Destiny 2, The Witch Queen. This, and a lot of Destiny tracks in general, I find hit hardest when they are connected to the context. Now, if you listen to something like Music of the Spheres, no, that is a standalone symphonic work, no different than, say, the planets. Like, that doesn't need, like, it doesn't need anything. But, like, you know, like this, like, clearly when there's action going on there, that's way more interesting. And in fact, when that music takes place in Witch Queen, it's hugely impactful and it's relevant. But if I listen to, I don't know. Anyway, the point is that, like, there is a world where we can remove context from video game music and have it mean something to us, if we are able to explore our own depths and our own emotions and finding ways to highlight that. And if I'm completely off the mark, that's like super okay. This is just a discourse and it's just a thing that's been sitting on my mind. And I just sort of wanted to, you know, bring it up in a different context than I normally would. This isn't like a pre-prepared video. I didn't script any of this. Like, it's just a chat. And feel free to let me know what you think about this. And I think it's going to be super interesting in an ongoing conversation, because I personally feel, like I said, my life's goal is to get a lot of these tracks that are standouts in the video game, you know, retcon, the video game lexicon, to come into the Symphony Hall, away from Pop's concerts and away from specific nights music, you know, where we listen to like a whole sequence, or like, you know, like watching whatever Star Wars with the music being played. Like, that's cool, but to me that's kind of a gimmick, and I would like to see it immortalized alongside the other greats that people, you know, shell out money every single year to see. That's the same stuff that we always see. So anyway, that's an interesting chat. Feel free to drop any comments. I'm definitely going to read these comments. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts and feelings on it, and see you later. Bye.